Chapter 5. I was surrounded by a thick, piercing darkness when I opened my eyes. My head was pounding like crazy, and when I tried to stand up, my right ankle was taken over by immense pain, which caused me to slump back against the cold floor. The floor was covered by a pale fog that brought a ghostly glow into the living room of the Moomin house, the bottom of whose staircase I was lying at. I instantly remembered my encounter with the Groke, and an indescribable dread began to eat at my soul. It was dead silent and dark everywhere. It was as if the entire house had retreated into some sort of hibernation in order to hide from the evil invading it. I shivered and tried to get up again. I watched my right foot and looked around. There was no sign of Snufkin or the rifle, and the candle that had illuminated the table was gone too. I took a few steps towards the front door, trying to move as quietly as possible. It wasn't until I arrived at the door that I remembered a couch had been dragged in front of it. I realized that I couldn't leave the house without making noise, which, if possible, only added to my feeling of dread. I moved my eyes to the staircase and wondered if I should return upstairs. Maybe everyone had just gone to sleep. No, Snufkin would have helped me, not left me lying on the floor. Suddenly, the silence was broken by some kind of dragging-like sound coming from upstairs. The sound was followed by a horrific breeze, the icy touch of which made my face numb and my breath visible. The dragging sound only got louder, so I instinctually began pushing the couch away from the door. I didn't care about the noise I was making because I had to act fast. The sound came closer and closer, and when I looked back at the top of the staircase, I thought I could see vague movement there. I was completely filled with terror, but still succeeded in moving the couch aside. I jerked the door open and hobbled outside. It was pitch black outside, but I pushed all scary thoughts aside and treaded forward. Even the moon didn't illuminate my path because it had retreated behind the clouds. I didn't dare to look behind me. I just moved forward. I managed to get into that mechanical state of being just for a moment when I heard from behind me a low, inhuman noise that sounded moaning, threatening, and insane at the same time. It was the same sound that I had heard on the first night. I struggled with all my might to move forward, but the breeze that had caught up to me further hampered my limping. I looked behind me once and saw the darkness enshrouding the front door of the Moomin house, reflecting the huge creature's vague outlines. At that exact moment, I noticed Snufkin's tent right next to the path, so I pushed with all my might to get to it. I didn't dare to look behind me, but the breeze slowing down my movement and the dragging sound, which apparently indicated movement, told me that the creature was following me. I arrived at the tent and dashed inside, hoping that the horrifying beast didn't see where I went. My ankle hurt a terrible lot, so I crawled to the back of the tent and went into the fetal position. I felt indescribable dread. My breathing got cut short when I saw through the fabric that huge, nightmarish creature sliding right past the tent. The coldness kept growing, but I gritted my teeth and tried to ignore it. I didn't dare to even breathe because I was afraid that I would make too much noise. I closed my eyes, my mind filled with frightened thoughts, and listened as the dragging noise, the dreadful panting, and the grass rustling from the cold were combined into one horrendous symphony. Eventually, all the sounds faded away, and I could breathe again. I felt the side of the tent. It was frozen. All the sounds had vanished. I felt relieved when I realized, or rather assumed, that the situation had passed. However, I was still cold, until I remembered that Snufkin had a blanket. Thus, I crawled to the entrance of the tent to warm myself. However, the apparent illusion of peace was broken, because at that moment, I heard, from the entrance of the tent, the most horrifying wail of all the sounds I had heard thus far, which made my heart beat at an abnormal rate. I instinctually turned towards the sound. That was, however, the last of my mistakes, because awaiting me in front of the entrance of the tent was the Groke, who had shifted all of her attention to me. I saw her lifeless white eyes that stared at me unwaveringly, and the grotesquely wide row of teeth, which slowly began stretching into a most horrifying smile. The creature's black hands emanated with cold, approaching my frostbitten face. I started to scream and noticed all the warmth flowing out of my lungs. Those terrifyingly cold hands were groping towards my throat, and I felt all the coldness and loneliness in the world touching my innermost being. I saw everything important in my life disappearing far into the horizon. The grip tightened, and I couldn't breathe. The Groke was still staring at me, and her face didn't even flinch. I couldn't do anything but look straight into her eyes, the black pupils reflecting my own image. Everything darkened, and my soul and all of my humanity retracted into a dead, silent darkness of permafrost. My scream had begun resembling the howling of that monstrous being, and ended in a low cry that defied all laws of humanity. My world spun, and I fell to the ground. Something died within me. The end. Leave a like on the video if you want to hear another Moomin horror story called Dystopian Moominvalley.